Once upon a time, there was a beautiful book called Vasilisa the Wise and Other Tales of Brave Young Women, written by one of my favourite authors, Kate Forsyth, gorgeously illustrated by Lorena Carrington, and published by Serenity Press. My beloved husband gifted this to me for my birthday, and I devoured it whole. Nom 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 nom. One magical day in January 2020, a time of great uncertainty and sparse toilet paper, an email arrived as if on golden parchment with a seal of red wax. It was from Karen McDermott of Serenity Press, requesting my music for Kate's audiobook version of Vasilisa, along with 2 other books in the long-lost fairy tale collection, The Buried Moon and Other Tales of Bright Young Women, and Snow White, Rose Red, and Other Tales of Kind Young Women. But let's step back in time for a moment. Kate and I had met in 2011 over a book we'd both read, Clever Maids, The Secret History of the Grimm Fairy Tales by Valerie Paradis. And we discussed the history of the Grimms, among other things. I had recently toured the fairy tale route through Germany, and Kate was preparing to do the same as she was researching The Wild Girl. I became a great fan of Kate's writing, reading many of her wonderful books and taking her writing classes, and we also saw each other at storytelling events. At one Australian Storytelling Guild conference, where Kate told the story of her great-great-great-great-grandmother Charlotte, a tale many of you will now know, I performed an early version of Sleeping Beauty while playing the harp. The song I played was Once Upon a Time, and must have captured Kate's attention because this is the music she chose to weave through her audiobook.
Once upon a time and far, far away, over the seas where enchantments lay. Once upon a time and far, far away, deep in the woods we will meet this day.
Vasilisa the Wise is a Russian variant of the Cinderella tale, in which a young and beautiful girl is mistreated by her stepmother and stepsisters, and is sent by them to the fearsome Baba Yaga to fetch fire. She outwits the old witch and ends up marrying the Tsar.
So, back to January 2020. Of course, I was delighted to offer my song, but I also wanted to offer other music I'd written for one thing or another, and especially to write new music for the project. The music I already had to offer had come from Fairy Bard, a business I started in 2010 and ran until my son was born in 2013. This includes the music from my one-woman play, Sleeping Kingdom, Waking Beauty, which I toured in 2012. So I created a share folder for Serenity Press, and the music I dropped into it included Sleeping Kingdom, which was used as a bookend,
Vasilisa the Wise and Other Tales of Brave Young Women, retold by Kate Forsyth, illustrated by Lorena Carrington.
Lullaby was the sound of Vasilisa's doll.
The doll's eyes began to shine like fireflies, and suddenly it became alive. It ate a morsel of the bread and took a sip of the milk, while Vasilisa told her all her woes. sorrow and do not weep, but close your eyes and go to sleep, for morning is wiser than evening," the little doll said.
Gypsy Moth was in The Stolen Child.
One day, the forlorn lass wandered into a camp of gypsies. A brightly coloured caravan was pulled close to a small fire, where a woman in a long ragged skirt stood stirring an iron pot. Children sat whittling toys and tools out of wood, while a long-haired man sat fixing a pile of pots and pans. "Where is my barn? I've lost my little boy. Can anyone help me?" Rosemary begged, thin hand stretched out imploringly. "Have you seen my boy?"
Fairies' welcome ushered in creatures from the midnight bog in The Buried Moon.
The dead folk rose in the water and looked up with white, twisted faces and hellfire in their empty eye holes. And the slimy, dripping dead hands slithered about, beckoning and pointing and making the moon's skin crawl with their cold, wet touch. The moon drew her cloak about her in fear, but she would not go back without seeing all there was to be seen.
And Isle of Apples found a home in The Pot Who Went to the Laird's Castle.
A young woman sat on the broad stone step, knitting busily. Her wild red hair had escaped its pins and blew about her round freckled face. Her petticoat was scarlet and her bodice was blue, and a warm plaid had been flung over her shoulders against the evening chill. As her needles clattered, she sang an old ballad.
There is an isle of apples across a distant sea, encircled by white horses forever riding free. Pale and fragrant blossoms nod gently in the breeze, where music is enchanting, so you may rest with ease.
From there it was new territory, my favourite part. Finally, my new music room would get a good workout. My recording style was a bit clunky. Although I had a microphone from my days of singing in rock bands, I had no way of connecting it to my computer. So instead, I used the recording device I had bought for recording folklore interviews. This meant that I picked up the sound of the room as well as the instrument I was playing, meaning I had to stop and wait for trucks going by or aeroplanes flying over, but sometimes it worked quite well. In the first book, Vasilisa the Wise, for the toy princess, Kate asked if I could slow down my song as a princess to match Princess Ursula's lament. So this...
As a princess, my destiny has been written, and many things are forbidden to me. As a princess, sometimes rules can be stupid. Wish I could fly with the bluebirds away.
became this.
As a princess, my destiny has been written, and many things are forbidden to me. As a prince. Wish I could fly with the bluebirds away.
The birds in the background were the birds in my backyard. Kate suggested some singing for the singing springing lark. So I listened to a lark, thanks to the internet. And elaborated on what I heard. In the second book, The Buried Moon, we have something new for Nastia's mother in A Mother's Yarn.
It was cold and dark in the empty hut, and she was hungry. How was she to live? She sat upon the floor and sobbed as if her heart would break. All of a sudden, she seemed to hear her mother's voice.
The wind sound was my own whooshing noise. My recording style also meant that my music would be limited to the real instruments I had available. So for me, that's my voice, harps, electronic piano, clarinet, and bodhrán, or Irish drum. The Blue Rose is a tale set in China. I learnt that an oriental sound can be found by using the pentatonic scale, or in other words, just using the black keys on the keyboard. I played around and came up with this melody.
I must have a blue rose that is warm and tender, not one that is cold and hard as stone. I will not marry you. The warrior stomped away in discomfiture.
For the maiden wiser than the Tsar, I brought out my clarinet for a short, cheeky refrain.
The Tsar was not pleased. "What is this folly?" he cried. "Begging your pardon, your Imperial Majesty, but my daughter bade me tell you that if you can cut a spinning wheel, a spindle, and a loom out of this old stick, she will spin you sails out of a handful of flax." The Tsar was astonished at this answer.
And the giant in Molly Whuppie is my husband Ben.
Once he had found all 3 knucklebone necklaces, he seized the 3 girls and dragged them away. His daughters woke up and began to cry, "Stop, stop, it's me!" But the giant only laughed and said, "I know it's you, and soon you'll be dead as stone."
In the third book, Snow White, Rose Red's The Lass Who Climbed Mischanter Mountain, Kate asked for Scottish-sounding music for Ailsa.
Ailsa wandered up and down the world for many a weary day, across moors drifting with mist, and through deep glens frowned upon by towering mountains.
Oh, the winding road leads far from home, where waits my loving heart, and heather blooms in fields afar. Still I must walk this path.
One day she came to a steep mountain bare of any tree, its slopes streaked with ice.
This tale also has some cheeky laughing imps, and my son seemed to fit the bill perfectly.
Out of the cloud of dust, 3 small winged shapes flew like black bats. They circled above the sisters' heads, laughing. Then flew away into the dawn.
Finally, there was one story left, missing an important musical element. Tricking the Witch required a violin. This was not an instrument I played, so I searched for a local violin player and was delighted to find Lucy Jankowski. Lucy wound up teaching me violin for the remainder of 2020. Sorry, family. Also, in Tricking the Witch, there's a tavern scene with Lucy's playing. As it happened, we had friends visiting us around this time who happily provided the tavern ambience. I put it all together on Logic, and here it is.
That night, Roland played his fiddle at a roadside inn and earned himself a hunk of bread, a tankard of ale, and a bed for the night. Before the week was gone, he was playing to a crowd of hundreds who danced the night away.
So, that's the story of how the soundtrack came together for 3 beautiful audiobooks in the long-lost fairy tale collection. But the story doesn't end there. I had so much fun creating this soundtrack, I decided to start a new business, Meadowlark Soundscapes. I asked Lorena to create the logo. Isn't it gorgeous? And with some amazing guidance from generous locals in the music industry, I realised I could actually plug my piano straight into my computer and make all sorts of instrument sounds. In January this year, Lorena asked for some of my music to accompany her art exhibition at Buddha Historic House, and I offered to write her an album.
Le roi des corbeaux. Il était une fois un sorcier vagabond qui n'aimait rien d'autre que de faire de mauvaises actions.
À la claire fontaine, m'en allant promener, j'ai trouvé l'eau si belle que je m'y suis baignée.
So this was written as a companion to Lorena's book with Sophie Masson, French Fairy Tales, also published by Serenity Press. I also contributed to a compilation album with Louisa John Kroll and Adrian Piggott from Spiral Dance. Things are on the move and I'm having so much fun in my new business. So thanks to Kate, Karen and Lorena for encouraging me onto this new path and inspiring me with your beautiful books. Thanks to the Australian Fairy Tale Society for allowing me to tell my story, and thank you so much for watching.
Once upon a time and far, far away, over the seas where enchantments lay,